Most people think that executive presence is something that you perform, speaking with more authority and projecting confidence in meetings. But after 25 years of working with senior executives, I've noticed something surprising. The people who actually have executive presence, they're not performing confidence. They're doing something else entirely. And once you understand this, you'll see why when some people speak, everyone listens, and why some people instantly look like leaders and others never quite do. Here's a problem I see all the time. A senior professional, 15, 20 years into their career, gets feedback that they need to work on their executive presence. And they go away and Google it. And they find articles about power poses and slowing their speech and about making eye contact. So they try all of that and they still get passed over. Or they walk into a room of senior stakeholders and they still feel like they don't quite belong there. And the problem is that they've been told executive presence is about how you look and sound, when it's actually about something much more fundamental. It's about whether people trust your judgment when the stakes are high. And no amount of slower speech or better posture will build that kind of trust. And here's why this matters so much at senior levels. Executive presence isn't tested in routine meetings. It's tested when something goes wrong, when the answer isn't obvious, when the people in the room are all looking to you. Those are the moments when people decide whether they trust your judgment or whether they still need someone else in the room to make the call. So if you're not building it intentionally, you're leaving it to chance. I want to tell you about a moment that changed how I thought about this entirely. I was a few years into being a partner at KPMG, one of the world's biggest professional services firms, and I was leading a big financial services client, the kind of engagement where a lot of people's reputations were on the line. And we'd hit a big problem. Some information had come through that changed the situation at this client considerably, and we had a very short window to decide how to respond. The client wanted certainty. They wanted me to tell them exactly what to do on a tricky, judgmental accounting matter. And I remember sitting in that room, feeling the pull to just give them an answer, to sound decisive, to perform that confidence. But luckily, I had a more experienced partner with me that day. And what he did instead has stayed with me ever since. He said to the client CFO, "Look, I want to be honest with you. We're dealing with some significant uncertainty here, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and we can't give you a definitive answer right now. But what I can tell you is what we know, what we don't know, and what I recommend we all do next and why." That went against every client service instinct that I had. I thought we needed to give the client an answer to show our capability, but the client CFO and their senior team settled completely. Not because the other partner had given them certainty, but because he'd taken ownership of the situation without pretending to have all of the answers. He stayed completely calm while acknowledging the difficulty. And that, to me, was true executive presence. Not the performance of confidence, but a demonstration of trustworthy judgment under pressure. And that moment completely changed how I think about executive presence. Because once you see it that way, you realize why so much of the advice that people get about executive presence is actually pointing them in the wrong direction. So before I show you what executive presence actually is, I want to clear something up, because if you're getting this wrong, it could be actively working against you. There are 3 misconceptions about executive presence that I see initially derailing some of the senior leaders that I work with. And the frustrating thing is, most people don't even know they're falling into them. So let's take a look. The first misconception is that executive presence requires charisma, that you've got to be magnetic, compelling, and naturally confident. They're often charismatic, so we assume that's what executive presence looks like. But here's what I've observed over and over again inside some of the UK's most successful companies. Some of the most trusted, most respected, most senior people are quiet. They don't dominate conversations. They listen more than they speak. But when they do speak, everyone pays attention. It's because of what they say. So executive presence isn't about volume, it's about weight. When you speak, does what you say actually move the conversation forward? And yes, charisma can help, but it can only ever be on top. Charisma without substance fails very quickly at executive levels. People can sense it, and once they do, then the trust completely disappears. So once you understand that executive presence isn't about the performance of charisma, many people then shift their focus to the next biggest trap. And that second misconception is that executive presence is about body language, posture, eye contact, the way you hold yourself. And again, these things aren't irrelevant. First impressions do matter. But here's the problem. You can have the perfect posture and still sound junior. You can slow your speech, maintain eye contact, take up more physical space, and still give an answer that makes everyone in the room wonder whether you should be there. You don't want to amplify a poor message. Body language doesn't tell people whether your thinking is sound. It doesn't signal that you can handle difficult decisions. It doesn't show that you can be trusted when the stakes are high. I remember meeting back in my KPMG days where this really polished director delivered a beautifully structured update to a client. But when the CFO asked the obvious follow-up question, so what's the next step? His answer dissolved into a list of caveats and possibilities, and he lost the room. Not because his delivery was poor, he was really good at this sort of thing, but because there was no real thought behind what the client really wanted to know. And it made me realize that executive presence isn't established by how you speak, it's established by whether your thinking holds up when people start probing it. And when you're genuinely clear in your thinking, when you have conviction based on real analysis, your body language reflects that more naturally. So if you're working on your posture before you've worked on the quality of your thinking, you've actually got it the wrong way around. Now, just a quick request, if you're enjoying this video, please be sure to give it a like, maybe even a comment, and perhaps subscribe to my channel, because let's face it, you're unlikely to go into YouTube and search for my name because you probably can't even pronounce it or remember what it is. The third misconception is the one that I see derailing senior leaders the most. Misconception 3 is the idea that executive presence means projecting certainty, that you can never show doubt, that confidence is the signal that people are looking for. And I want to challenge that directly, because overconfidence, particularly false confidence, actually reduces trust at executive levels, because executives are seen enough to know that certainty in complex situations just doesn't exist. And when they sense that you're overly projecting confidence, they stop trusting your judgment. The thing that actually builds trust in complex moments is both having a view and being honest about how confident you are in it. That signals something far more powerful than confidence. It signals judgment. Now, executive presence is rarely judged in routine meetings. It's judged in those moments of uncertainty. And in those moments, what people are looking for isn't someone who is pretending to have all the answers. It's someone whose judgment they trust enough to actually follow. So, if executive presence isn't about charisma, it's not about body language, and it's not about confidence theater, what is it? Well, here's how I define it. Executive presence is the signal that people can trust your judgment when the stakes are high. Clarity, ownership, and composure. So let's quickly go through each one. Clarity is all about where you can take a complex situation with lots of variables and uncertainty and explain what you think, why you think it, and what you'd recommend. Simply, without burying people in lots of caveats, without drowning them in detail. Clarity isn't about simplifying the problem. It's about having done enough thinking to communicate your view clearly. And the people who struggle here often have done the thinking, but they then haven't organized their thoughts enough. So the answer comes out as a stream of observations instead of a structured view. And executives don't normally have the patience to reconstruct your thinking for you. They want to know, what do you think is happening, why, and what should we do next? So clarity is the first behavior. Ownership is the next. This is where you take responsibility for your thinking and your decisions. You're willing to put your flag in the ground, even when you're not 100% certain. You've earned the ability to take ownership through the quality of your thinking. And ownership here also means being willing to attach your name to a recommendation. So one of the quickest ways to sound junior in a room is to present a few different options, but then step back from the decision. That signals analysis without responsibility. Senior leaders are looking for people who are prepared to say, given what we know, this is the direction I'd recommend. The final behavior is all about your composure, where you stay regulated when the pressure rises. This isn't about being emotionally flat. People interpret that as being disconnected. This is about staying grounded. It's where you can hold the weight of a difficult situation. People watch how you handle those moments, because that's where your reputation is actually built. Composure matters because pressure is contagious in senior environments. When someone visibly loses their footing in a difficult conversation, maybe they become defensive, or they start rushing, or maybe they become overly certain, the other people feel it immediately. But when someone stays grounded whilst acknowledging the complexity, the opposite happens. People relax because they sense the situation is being handled. Clarity, ownership, and composure. When people see those three things consistently over time, they stop wondering whether you should be in the room, and they actually start wondering how to get you into the room earlier. Now, here's the important part. These aren't personality traits that you either have or you don't have. They're behaviors, and behaviors can be learned and practiced and made habitual. Clarity comes from doing the thinking before you open your mouth, structuring your view before the meeting, not during it. Ownership comes from being willing to lead with a recommendation, not hiding behind a list of options. And composure comes from building enough confidence in your own reasoning that the pressure doesn't destabilize you. And the good news is that you most likely already have the raw materials here. The gap is usually in how consistently people demonstrate it, particularly in the moments that matter the most. Now, the strategies I've just shared will change how people see you, but promotions and career progression aren't decided day to day. They're decided in a few key conversations, in interviews, in one-to-ones, in leadership discussions. So watch this video next, where I break down exactly what employees do in those situations to get themselves promoted. I'll see you there.